All right then. So some more conversations. So continuing session number 3 of Mani ki gappe. As Mani as a person, Mani as a father, Mani the magician. तो हम जब जब छोटे थे तो मणि को ऐसे शौक चढ़ते ही रहते थे। कोई भी विद्या जिसको कहते हैं ना, उनको उसका शौक चढ़ जाता था तो वो उस विद्या के पीछे पड़ जाते थे, फिर वो विद्या उनकी हो जाती थी। मतलब अगेन वो तो हमको कहते थे कि मैंने सीखी है, तो इसलिए उन्होंने ज्योतिष सीखी। वो जब ही वाज वेरी यंग तो हो गया होगा उनको ज्योतिष का शौक, तो उन्होंने ज्योतिष सीखी। तो ज्योतिष भी सीखने के लिए कहाँ जाके सीखेंगे? मतलब कैसे पता चलेगा कि भाई क्या सारे हाथों में क्या कॉमन है क्या अनकॉमन है? तो ही डिसाइडेड कि अच्छा, मतलब जो लोग मर्डरर्स होते हैं, जो लोग मर्डर करते हैं किसी का वगैरह वगैरह, तो उनके हाथों में तो वो लकीर या मतलब उनके स्टार्स में जो कुछ भी है वो तो लिखा ही होगा ना, कि वो ज्योतिष में दिख ही रहा होगा कि इसने तो आगे जाके ये करना है। तो वो पहुंच गए अपने राजस्थान में जो कोई भी जेल थी वहां पर पहुंच के, और उनके हाथ देखते थे, क्योंकि हाथ तो एस्ट्रोलॉजी भी सीखी लेकिन साथ में वो पामिस्ट्री भी। तो जाके और सारे की सारे उनके हाथ देख देख के कि उनके हाथ में क्या कॉमन है, कौन सी लाइनें कॉमन है, कि सारे की सारे यहाँ पे मर्डर कर करके और जेल पहुंचे हुए हैं। तो इस तरीके से उन्होंने पामिस्ट्री भी सीखी और वो ऐसे ज्योतिषी भी सीख ली और स्टोन्स भी पता नहीं क्या क्या सीख लिया। जब उन्होंने ये सब सीख लिया फिर उसके बाद वो भविष्यवाणी करने बैठते थे। तो पूरा अपना नॉलेज लगा के, मतलब एक छोटी से छोटी लाइन देख के कि इसका क्या फर्क पड़ना चाहिए, एक भी छोटा सा ग्रह है इसका क्या फर्क पड़ना चाहिए किसी और की जिंदगी पे। फिर जब वो बोलते थे तो मतलब जो भी वो, क्योंकि एस्ट्रोलॉजी क्या है, एस्ट्रोलॉजी 50% इज साइंस एंड 50% इज डिडक्शन। तो आधा तो जो साइंस है वो तो इसी वजह से तो सारी की सारी वो हॉरोस्कोप होती है वो आजकल कंप्यूटर पे भी बन जाती है, क्योंकि वो तो साइंस वाला पार्ट है। और बाकी रह गया उसको देख के और उसमें से नतीजा, उसके अंदर से डिडक्शन निकालने का पार्ट। सो दैट पार्ट ही यूज्ड टू स्टडी वेरी डीपली, वेरी intricately into the science of it all, and then he would give his deductions. Once again, the deductions never went wrong. It was like whatever he said, that would exactly be true. He would say this will continue and this will finish at this time and all of that. Again, those things were absolutely on the dot, right, for those people. Once again, now when we look back at it, कि जो कुछ भी वो बोल रहे थे वो उनके मुंह से जो कुछ भी होने वाला था, इट वॉज नॉट कमिंग फ्रॉम द प्लेस ऑफ कि उनका डिडक्शन, जो जो कुछ भी मुंह से निकले वो तो हो जाता था, क्योंकि दैट वाज द फ्रीक्वेंसी दैट ही वाज एट। तो नाउ व्हेन वी लुक बैक एट इट वी कैन सी कि यस, ही मेड द डिडक्शंस, बट व्हाटएवर वाज टू कम आउट ऑफ हिज माउथ would be the solution for that person. And one thing he was very categorical about, like when people will say आपकी तो डेथ जितने सालों में हो जाएगी, ये हो जाएगा, he would never make those deductions. He would only speak what was needed for that person to come out of the situation. So nothing like you will have a disease at this. If he said that you would have a disease at this, he would also be speaking ki usko nikalne ke liye this is the answer, this is what you should do as the solution. At that point we thought he was the best astrologer on the planet. Even palmistry, oh my god. So Mani and Rachna. So Mani was a poet. So there was this one poetry festival that was happening in Europe, and he was chosen to go and represent India. So Mani and Rachna both went to represent India in that poetry festival. And they were state guests of the European countries who were conducting that. तब तक तो मणि की जो मास्टरी थी ऑन पामिस्ट्री, प्लस व्हाट ही डिडंट नो वाज कि पामिस्ट्री थोड़ी है और बाकी की फिर इट्स द गिफ्ट दैट ही हैज, ही वाजंट सो अवेयर ऑफ इट. he wasn't so aware of it, but he went to some European country. And then wahan pe they were meeting the state guests and ministers, because there are poets from the entire world who have collected over there. It's the World Poetry Festival. So as that happened, Mani was shaking hands with somebody. And as he shook hands with that person, so he would do this. As you're shaking hands with me, he will do this. And in just doing that, he would be reading the lines. So when he shook hands with somebody and then he did this, there was a lady. And then he apparently told the lady कि जो अभी तुम करके आए हो, जो कुछ भी तुम डॉक्यूमेंट साइन करके आए हो, you don't worry, it's going to be all right for you. It's going to be very good for you, whatever you have done. So that lady went like, how, what? Like, and then she was like, I want to talk to you. So she called him to the corner after everything was done. And then she said, I just signed my divorce papers before coming here. But how could you know that? So he said, well, I do some palmistry. But he said, but you didn't do any palmistry. You didn't look at my hand. You didn't do anything. And Mani said, yeah, but all I needed to do was मैंने यूं किया और उसके अंदर मुझे यही पता चला. This is something that I need to tell you. Again, when we look at it from the energy front now, जो कुछ भी उन्होंने palmistry से देखा, he was receiving all of that. और बस इतना सा करने में, and unka to ho gaya, and he was able to say. After that, so it became that all the poets to went back, but Mani was given this state welcome. Mani and Rachna were on the state welcome for almost like 2 to 3 months, getting to travel to all of these countries and enjoying that moment. So that is how he was the astrologer and the palmist and the numbers. एंड कितनों को ही उन्होंने बोल दिया था कि ये स्टोन पहन लो, ये कर लो. सो इवन न्यूमरोलॉजी, every science that he would pick up, matlab his predictions were just most amazing. Except we know when the predictions go wrong. When do they go wrong? When you are attached to outcomes, you are attached to people. So for so many things that he made predictions for me, then he didn't want to see those predictions. So then as a father, he would keep looking for, isko solve kaise kare? How to solve this and how to solve that? Because this part of awareness, he didn't have. So he saw that I had something glaring at him. He could see something in my horoscope or in my numerology, palmistry, whatever. And he didn't want to accept it. So it is when you are attached that from the attachment, the best astrologers, the best doctors, when they are attached, when the doctors are attached to the patient, when astrologers are attached to their client with other cords, even the guidances will all go gadbad. They will not be correct. And Mani's was no different. So many of them, where he was not attached to the outcomes and all of that, he could see. He said he must have seen ki kuch to doctory ki line hai. So he was like, Meri beti to doctor banegi. All the way through. So when father is saying doctor banegi, I just simply got into the medical and I did all of that. And at the last minute, it's another long story. Last minute, I said no. And he couldn't understand. It's like, if you don't be a doctor, what will you be? I said, I don't know about that, but I don't want to be a doctor. And then it took him a long time to even come to terms that I am saying no to my own kismat, because he thought ki iski to line hai ekdam doctoron wali, to doctor banegi. Well, I didn't become a doctor. I went on to become some manager in a bank, and he knew nothing about banking. So the only thing he knew was like RBI hota hai, like sabse bada bank. So he was like, अच्छा चलो ये बैंक में आ गई, अब मेरी बेटी RBI की गवर्नर बनेगी. That's all. But that was a father speaking with attachment for the daughter कि मेरी बेटी कुछ तो बनेगी ना. So that was that. Today when I look back at it and I say, oh my God, I am a doctor. I am a doctor. I am somebody who heals people, and that's what the doctors are supposed to do. But I am not that kind of a doctor, because those doctors, the one who operate on people, they are so much in the body, they are so much in the space of this is good for the body, this is not good for the body, you don't do this, you will get this disease. So the doctors are sitting in so much of fear. And I was not meant to be that kind of a doctor, because I don't sit in fear. So how can it be that I will be that kind of a doctor, even though my hand said it? But my hand said it, they said it for now and not for that kind of a doctor, this fraud kind of a doctor. So I became this doctor much after he was gone. And then, as a matter of fact, he has all of his hands in making me this doctor. So looking through all of this, he must have been going like, duh, when he became energy and he was able to see through all of it. But talking about sciences, it was so amazing. He would just get onto something, and then that new skill, that new science would just come to him. So once upon a time, he decided कि अच्छा मैं ध्यान लगाऊंगा and let's see what people are doing. Then he would just call up people and totally freak them out. Like, so he'd call his friend and say कि हाँ क्या चल रहा है. Now those were the days of the landline. So कुछ अपनी गप्पे करेंगे. And Mani would be like, अच्छा ऐसा है, ये जो बार बार तुम जाके और खिड़की के बाहर खड़े हो जाते हो ना, अभी ये मौसम खराब है, अभी वापस से जाके खिड़की पे मत खड़े होना. And then people would get freaked out, like, how do you know? Did you call earlier? Did somebody else answer the phone? He only knew because he saw the person standing next to the window, and now he's calling them and he's totally freaking them out. So he would do this, and one of the people who had to bear the brunt of it was my brother. So my brother, he in winters, किसको नहाना है, that too in Delhi की सर्दियों में. So my mom would be after his life, and then finally she'd get fed up and she'd go and put him in front of Mani. वहां पे तो question answer है ही नहीं ना, वहां पे तो क्या हो रहा है. So मम्मी नहा नहीं रहा है, अच्छा जा नहाने के लिए जाओ. And so he would go inside, and then उसके बाद 1 घंटा अच्छे से पानी बह रहा है, नहा के निकल रहा है पूरा, like ओहो बहुत सर्दी है, नहाना पड़ गया, like some water over here and everything. And my father is just sitting on the bed and looking at him and not saying anything and looking at him. And those eyes keep, I know what you did in there. So he was just looking, and bhai came and fell at his feet. बस आज नहीं पापा, आज नहीं, कल नहा लूंगा. तो बोले तो 1 घंटे से अंदर था तो तू कर क्या रहा था? So he's like, मैंने सारे tiles को नहला दिया. So he was one time again. My brother was doing architecture, so he was in SPA, School of Planning and Architecture in Delhi. So सबमिशन था, तो सुबह सुबह जा रहे हैं, देन ही कॉल्ड एंड ही सेड कि आज पूरा दिन बहुत सारी क्लासेस हैं, सो आई वोंट बी एबल टू कम बैक. तो मैं तो अभी देर से ही वापस आऊंगा. सो ठीक है, वी वर यूज्ड टू दिस. इट वाज वेरी वेरी difficult program, that's SPA, being an architect. So it was normal for us to say अच्छा ठीक है. And शाम को थका हारा भाई comes back and like आते ही पर्स की मम्मा प्लीज चाय पिला दो, आई एम सो टायर्ड, दिस एंड दैट, और पूरा की पूरा चालू है. My father comes out of the room and he's like कि कैसा रहा submission? And so brother is like कि हाँ हाँ अच्छे से हो गया, but like बहुत मुश्किल था. And then my father says और मूवी कैसी रही? तो भाई is like एकदम उसको क्या बोलेगा, क्योंकि पिताजी तो बैठ गए देखने के लिए कि बेटा कहाँ पे है, दिख गया मूवी में बैठा हुआ है. So he's like मूवी कैसी रही? And then उसके बाद like सब बोलती बंद. When I found out about this, I तो went दंदनाते हुए to my dad's room and I said पहले प्रॉमिस करो कि ये सब मेरे साथ नहीं करोगे, क्योंकि मुझे कभी नहीं पता. आप मुझे प्रॉमिस करो कि आप ये मेरे साथ नहीं करोगे, कभी भी पता नहीं लगाओगे कि मैं कहाँ पे हूँ, क्या कर रही हूँ. लाइक सारी पोल है यहाँ पे ऐसे, मतलब इतनी मुश्किल से तो कोई बहाने मिलते हैं, ऊपर से सारे बहाने तो लाइक नजर आ जाते हैं. फिर भी अगर बाई चांस एक गलती से एक चल भी गया तो ये तो ऐसे बैठ के देख लेंगे. So I made him promise कि आप प्रॉमिस करो कि ये वाला पार्ट आप मेरे साथ नहीं करोगे. So anyways, so funny it was. So anyways, what was the story that I was going to tell you today about him? Yeah. And so as a writer, he was amazing. तो वो बैठते थे, शायद ये मैंने कहानी पहले बता भी रखी है कईयों को, कि वो बैठते थे और हमको कहते थे कि अब अगले 10-15 दिन के लिए मेरे को डिस्टर्ब मत करना, मैं बैठ रहा हूँ और अब मैं लिखने के लिए बैठ रहा हूँ. एंड देन ही वुड सिट टू राइट. एंड अगले 15 दिन हमको उनकी शक्ल नहीं दिखती थी. वो बस अपने कमरे में बैठते थे और वो ऐसे बिस्तर पे तख्ती लेके बैठते थे एंड ही वुड राइट ऑन दैट. सो एज अ राइटर, यू नो, वी हैड मेनी बंडल्स ऑफ पेपर सिटिंग विद अस एंड ही वुड सिंपली पेपर इतनों में से वो ऐसे करके और शीट्स उठा लेते थे और उन शीट्स को अपनी तख्ती पे लगा देते थे. जो उन्होंने वो शीट्स उठाई, पहले पेज से लिखना शुरू करते थे. कभी ऐसा नहीं हुआ कि ओह राइटर्स ब्लॉक हो गया, आगे कैसे बढ़ूं, समझ में नहीं आ रहा. कभी ऐसे वो जो राइटर्स को दिखाते हैं ना कि ऐसे ऐसे पेज करके फेंक रहे हैं, एक पेज कभी वेस्ट नहीं हुआ, कभी कचरे में नहीं गया. एक पेज वेस्ट नहीं हुआ. फॉरगेट दैट. व्हेन ही वुड राइट, जो पेपर पे लिख रहे हैं उसमें एक भी वर्ड क्रॉस्ड आउट नहीं होता था. एक भी वर्ड नहीं क्रॉस्ड आउट. जो लिखा जा रहा है दैट्स द फाइनल वर्जन. दैट्स द फाइनल वर्जन. उसके अंदर कोई करेक्शन नहीं, एक शब्द इधर से उधर नहीं. एंड आई यूज्ड टू इवन बी स्मॉल. जब वो लिखते थे तो कई बार तो मैंने बस हिंदी पढ़नी सीखी थी, मैं 3rd ग्रेड में थी, बट आई वुड कम एवरी सिंगल डे एंड आई वुड रीड. समझ में थोड़ी आता था, बट आई वुड, जैसे आज क्या लिखा, एंड आई वुड सिट राइट नेक्स्ट टू हिम and I would read whatever he was writing. कुछ समझ में नहीं आ रहा, पर I would read everything. उनकी सारी की सारी first manuscripts were the final manuscripts. And as those manuscripts were happening, on the first page he would start writing. Not a single page wasted, not a single extra page picked up. वो जितने पे हाथ गया वो उतनी उठाएंगे. कहानियां लिख रहे हैं तो कहानियां उतनों में खत्म हो जाएंगी, पूरी बुक बन जाएगी. उपन्यास लिख रहे हैं तो पहले पेज से आखिरी पेज पे इट विल बी फिनिश्ड. और ऐसा भी नहीं कि 3 पेज बच गए. ही विल बी गोइंग राइट टू द लास्ट पेज एंड देन फिनिशिंग ओवर देयर. एंड दैट इज हाउ all of his books were written. Whether it was poetry, then he will be picking up, और जितने उठा लिए उतनों की वो किताब बनेगी, उतने poems आएंगी, and he would write. And we couldn't understand this part. वो 15, अच्छा ये भी नहीं, 15 दिन के अंदर वो बाहर निकलते थे. उनका ये पूरा की पूरा अंगूठा, क्योंकि हाथ से लिखते थे, it wasn't even टाइपराइटर पे नहीं लिखते थे. People knew how to use a typewriter, he didn't know how to use a typewriter. So वो हाथ से ही लिखते थे. तो जब वो 15 दिन के बाद निकलते थे, उनका ये हाथ ना, मतलब इतना सूजा अंगूठा, इतना सूजा हुआ होता था, बिकॉज 300 पेज दिन रात. मॉम का काम होता था, डिनर लेके जाएंगी, साथ में प्लेट रख देंगी, फिर 2 घंटे के बाद देखेंगी वो डिनर वैसे की वैसे पड़ा है, तो शी विल कम आउट, ब्रिंग दैट फूड आउट, उसको गर्म करेंगी, वापस रख देंगी और लंच रख देंगी. खा लिया तो खा लिया, बट अदरवाइज ही वुड जस्ट बी राइटिंग. एंड व्हेन द थिंग वुड फिनिश, वो बाहर निकलते थे 15 दिन के बाद. फिर उसके बाद ही वुड से अच्छा अब दूसरी. तो ही ऑलवेज यूज्ड टू काइंड ऑफ राइट इन पेयर्स. मतलब एक कुछ लिख लेंगे, कोई तो प्ले लिख लिया तो अगला वाला कविता संग्रह हो जाएगा. कोई तो समटाइम्स इफ ही इज राइटिंग द पोएट्री कलेक्शन फर्स्ट, the next one will be a novel, and these are all different forms. These are, so anybody who is a playwright is a playwright. When anybody is a storyteller and is novelist, they are novelists. People can't play in so many different forms, and that too one after the other. But he would always write pairs, and then so he would like take a couple of days off, and then again that 10 days or 15 days would start, and he would be out. And we couldn't fathom ki ye hota kaise hai. But anytime that you asked him ki like, how is it that you can manage to write a full novel in 15 days, and then after that write poetry, like, a full book in another 10-15, how can you even do that? And the only thing he said was, mere haath pe devi aake baithti hai. So now when we understand all of these, the frequency of manifestation, so devi is Kali, and she's coming and she's giving all of this manifestation in the hand, and this is the novel is manifesting, whichever way the skill is manifesting when the frequency is of manifestation. So he was the writer, so his books were manifesting, and every book that he wrote, it got awards. There was, whichever state has a Hindi writing award, he will get that award. Every book has to make award money, and then, as a writer, and then that would be where he would get his money from. So this was the beautiful part about him being in the frequency and totally manifesting. But the awareness that he has taken me to, he has held my hand and taken me to such higher levels of awareness, but he didn't have that much awareness to be able to look and shift his frequency. And that's the first thing he taught me. But he didn't know how to shift his frequency with that much ease and grace. So when the Devi comes, and he's going to sit down and write. But because he didn't know how to shift, so the judgments he was holding on to. And when anybody amongst writers and poets and all of that, so when anybody would ask him, Ki Mani, kya kar rahe ho aajkal? And he would always say to them, Ki, Are, I'm working on a book for the last 3 years. I'm working on it. I'm going to be, moving through the final manuscript pretty quickly. And maybe I'll get a book this year or not. And I would ask him, like, but you are writing in 15 days. Why don't you tell them? And he said, no, these are all writers, and they all know how a book is written. And they write every book in 3 years. If I tell them that I'm doing all of this, they will tell me that you are just fooling us, you are lying, and you are not speaking the truth, and it doesn't happen this way. And then I will not be welcome amongst them. So that is where he held that judgment for the self script. But only we knew that 15 days, one book, and in another 10-15 days, the next book would be out. And everything that he received was guided. The one thing that I couldn't understand in those days was if it's guided, it should be like nice, beautiful stuff. All of his writings were steeped in Rajasthan, and then stories of the nomadic life, Rajasthan ki, Ret se judi hui sari stories. So what I couldn't understand, and then of course, the language. So every language was like filled with gali. Every second sentence was filled with gali. So I was like, Devi aake baithti hai, so how can she give these kind of words? Now there was my judgment at play at what the Devi should speak and what the Devi shouldn't speak, right? So it was my judgment on that. But now when I look back, well, the most authentic flavor is going to be created, and whatever is needed, through that book will come through that writing. So all of it was set up in Rajasthan. It was all, many of them were just really like stories of struggle, stories of lack, and moving through those. But stories were of lack. However, they were being written completely in guidance. That's why no word crossed out. And this we knew about him. And it was just magical as to how he wrote. And then when my journey began, I wasn't writing any books or anything, but I was guided to take messages for people. And when somebody would call me and say, I want a message for myself, I would say, okay, that's it. Just give me your name. Don't tell me what your story is. Don't tell me what your story is. Don't tell me what you need to know. Don't tell me anything. Those are the days when I didn't know how to get people into my frequency, that they can take their own guidance. But I would simply sit and take guidance for them. I almost have about 10, 12 registers that I filled up with just taking guidances for people. And one day, it just so happened I was sitting and I started to flip through the books. And as I started to flip through the books, they held messages for me, they held messages for others, they held messages for people I didn't know. And I'm flipping and flipping and flipping the pages. And the only thing that I noticed was that whenever I'm taking those messages, no matter how long, how short, there was not a single word crossed out. And that is the day I understood, because I wasn't writing the messages, I already knew that. But that day I totally, truly understood as to how Mani was writing those stories, those novels, that poetry. And so not a single word crossed out, and he would just write. And that is how the writing of Mani happened. Okay, everybody, that's the story for today. So much fun stories about Bhai got stuck with all the predictions that were happening. But even though I told him not to do the predictions, but anywhere that I would try to do this and that and like try to get by, झूठ बोल के, झूठ नहीं बोल सकते थे उस आदमी से. He would always manage to catch. Can you imagine how difficult it is to live with a person where you can't lie to them, especially as a child who wants to go for parties and the father is like, kahin nahi ja sakte. But that story for another day. Lots and lots of love. See you guys.
अरे मेनल आज पकड़ते तो आज भी पकड़ लेते हैं, छोड़ते कहाँ हैं?
हाँ, छोड़ दे.
सबकी पोल तो आज भी पोल खोल देते हैं.
सबकी खोल देते ना. मैंने गिव अप मार दिया. मैं झूठ बोलना छोड़ दिया ना इसी में.